don't think I can do comments when I'm live. I think
We
it's
just have to
after
go
the fact.
to, you've gotta watch it on, oh, hey, you guys, we are live. So there we go. I wanted to take a minute to thank everybody who has shown up and who made time in their day for this. We really appreciate it. The you don't know jack about interview strategy and networking. We'll fix that. Is obviously is tongue in cheek, but things have changed, right? How we did things 10 years ago, 5 years ago, a year from now, or a year ago have changed. And so what we're doing is bringing, subject matter experts into the conversation so you guys can ask questions. And we really want as much engagement as possible from everybody. Lindsay, you are such a rock star. Thank you for joining us. So what I'd love to do is we're going to start with Randy first, and then work our way around. So just give a quick overview of who you are, and then we'll start the panel and get this party started. Oh, wait, Randy, for some reason we can't hear you. Maybe you accidentally muted yourself. Okay, we're having a technical difficulty with that. Lynn, we'll move on to you while we get Randy figured out.
All right. Good morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you're calling in from. My name is Lynn Williams. I'm in Pennsylvania, and I wear a couple different hats. I write resumes and LinkedIn profiles. I also am the executive director of the Great Careers Group, so greatcareers.org. We're a nonprofit providing online career education, and I'm also working on writing my doctoral dissertation on the topic of LinkedIn for job seekers. That's me in a nutshell.
So, real underachiever, Yeah. All right, Donna.
Hi, everybody. My name is Donna Spina. I'm in Pennsylvania, too. Lynn and I are almost neighbors. I work with small business owners to help them to not go belly up, and corporate executives to not burn out. According to a recent survey by the American Psychological Society, 77% of all workers are experiencing work-related stress. So my work focuses on personal leadership development, empathetic communication, and resilient mindset so that we can illuminate a path forward in any business or career and get the clients to be better equipped to meet those rising challenges with confidence, clarity, calm, and kindness. So I'm excited to be here today to help those in attendance be able to better position themselves to get their next position.
All right, Dan.
Hey everyone, good to see y'all again. Special happy birthday to our fellow compatriot Gina Riley, who's celebrating 55 today, which is why she's not here, and Lindsay, who is in the audience. My name is Dan Roth. This is my third time being on the 4 panels that we've done. My focus work is really on decluttering and finding direction and strategy in a world where there seems to be very little of it. I also work within the mental health field and really try to support people in ensuring that they feel validated in and of themselves. As we go through this, if you are looking to sign up or are interested, behind me is the webpage for the event. If you scan those QR codes on your phone, then that will actually bring you to the site where you can sign up. Back over to you.
All right, so I feel like I am like the underachiever of this group, but that's okay. I learn something every single time I'm on here. So I am Jennifer Sethry. I'm the CEO of Intry Careers, and we built a technology platform that helps identify bias in hiring software and helps to get people's resumes ATS ready and get them through applicant tracking system software. I've started companies, I've sold companies, I've run a couple public companies. And, my mission for doing this is because it's terrible when you feel ghosted. It's terrible when you feel invisible. And because technology is sort of my area of expertise, this is why I lend my time and efforts here. So let's sort of jump into when we are preparing for different types of interviews. So just for y'all who are joining, what we're going to be talking about is preparing for different types of interviews, showcasing your unique value, effective networking tactics, navigating virtual in-person interviews, advanced networking strategies, and then we have a Q&A session. So any of you can ask questions, and then we'll try to either answer them as we go along, or we will do it at the end during a Q&A. So I know Randy is having some technical difficulties, and he is going to be joining us back in a minute. But, the first thing that we're going to talk about is behavioral and situational interviewing questions. And it's something we touched on our LinkedIn Live earlier this week. And that's a hot topic for me because, what are behavioral and situational interviewing questions, right? I mean, I think people have different interpretations of what those questions are and how do you prepare and how do you, demonstrate your technical skills effectively. Randy is back. We can hear you. Yes.
Yes, it's going to save my reputation.
All right. So here we go. The first question is you and me, and it's talking about behavioral and situational interview questions. So as a CEO of a company and different companies, I've interviewed thousands of candidates. And, I think the situational interview questions for me are, if you're in a difficult situation, right? And maybe you're in a team meeting, people are disagreeing on your team, you're interviewing for a manager position. How do you handle those sorts of situations if you're the interviewer? And so if you're asking someone that question, Randy, what sort of answer would you expect back? Or can you guide people to answer that question?
Well, you mentioned the word behavioral, behavioral interviewing. And that's all, I'm a licensed behavioral interviewer, whatever that's worth.
I know, that's why I'm here.
Yeah, I know. But briefly, I've interviewed both as a headhunter and also as a coach, probably thousands of people. I looked that up the other day. But past experience success is an indicator of future results. And if you have a solid story, and I like to use situation, action, results, that speaks volumes.
So give an example. So not just maybe theoretical, like in sort of that situation, what's the good way and what's a bad way?
Well, I think the bad way is why are you a leader, or why do you see yourself as thus and such? So what about that? That's the bad way. We never use the word why in an interview. It puts people on the defensive. I used it all the time as a recruiter to see how defensive they would get. But so that would be a bad way. A good way would be, now everybody seems to have leadership skills. Can you tell me how you're unique that way? And can you provide some evidence of it? Or tell me a story. People have stories. So that would be a good way.
Okay, so I'm going to just sort of add on to that a little bit. So when I'm asking people sort of those questions, if I'm trying to hire a director or a manager, and if they say, the question that I was mentioning earlier is, how would you handle a difficult situation? If they say, well, in general, I let them work it out, and, I talk to them afterwards, I generally take a little bit of a pause at that, because you don't want to embarrass people on your team, but you also need to be like, hey, Lindsay, I'm just going to use you. Lindsay, understand, this is sort of a challenging situation, but perhaps there's a different way to respond in this, and why don't we take this offline, right? Because I think there's a way where you have to show leadership. You don't want to tear the other person down, but that's, you want to give the person that's interviewing you ways that you've dealt with difficult situations that highlights, sort of situational interview questions and how you're sort of responding to that. Because I think, listen, there are thousands of people applying for every single job that's posted. And if you make it to the top 5, they're going to ask hard questions. And some of how you answer those questions are going to be the difference between getting a job and not getting a job. So, Dan and Donna and Lynn, before we move on to the technical interviewing questions that Randy's going to talk about, so you can showcase your technical expertise, what are some sort of examples? Because I want people who are listening to get some really tangible examples. What would you say?
If I may, Jennifer,
Yeah.
that situation that you referenced, when an individual shows courage and confidence when they're able to have that uncomfortable conversation in the moment, and there is a diplomatic way that you can deliver your words so they don't land where people get defensive or they feel as though you're slighting them in any way, especially if it's in a group. I think that is the differentiating factor between someone that really can handle a leadership position and those that cannot. The ones that shy away and say, I just let them work it out, that screams at me they don't feel confident, or they're afraid of being the bad guy in that conversation. So asking a few more questions about why an individual said what they did or felt the way they do, I think is a better way of getting to a deeper level of cause when you're in an interview situation. When I used to interview people, I would ask them about difficult times in their lives, and then I would let them tell me what the difficult time was. And I asked them, I would validate their emotions in the situation. And I'd say, well, how did you grow from that? Or what did you do in response to that immediately? If you could do that situation over again, now that you've disassociated from it from an emotional level, what would you have done differently? It tells me adaptability, flexibility, continuous learning. They don't realize that, but that's getting them to talk. It showcases all that. And nowadays we have to be mindful with what questions we can ask with all the sensitivities out there. So it gets in a position where they volunteer more information, but they have to be aware of what they're saying and how it's applicable and how it's perceiving them. Sadly, that's where I think a lot of people choose interviews, much like they do with test taking, is they just get nervous and their brain shut down. So practicing that difficult questions in advance of an interview so it rolls off your tongue, I think is a great skill to learn. And watch yourself in the mirror, because body language speaks volumes too.
100%. I was actually, Donna, get out of my brain, because I was just going to say, like, role playing. I mean, I'm okay. We can share the space. There's plenty of room. That, role playing with people is always a really good idea. And for me, when I was going from maybe say like a one leadership position, maybe to another, maybe it was a bigger company or a smaller company, I had to really adjust my tone and my position, because I don't have the job yet. I'm not in charge, right? So I need to be confident, but I also need to not come across as dismissive. And I think sometimes a lot of executives, when they're interviewing, can do that, right? Unintentionally. So does anybody else have anything to add? I do want to get to the technical interview.
I have one quickie. There really, unless this is a nice segue into the technical. There really is no wrong answer in an interview. It does matter. It does matter in a technical interview, which we're about to talk about. You have to know about your ones and zeros, analog and digital. But what's really important is how you answer the question. Are you confident answering the question? And it's like 60 to 70% of the hires. Do they like you? Do they want to work with you? The rest of it is hard skills and soft skills. Mm-hmm. But and if you're not being authentic in an interview, I get this so often. Sometimes I get to sell myself in an interview. Well, just be yourself, answer questions truthfully, ask good questions, and effective listening. That's what's going to get. That's how you'll move on.
Right. Lynn, do you have anything to add to that before we move on to some of the technical questions?
I missed a little bit because I was having technical difficulties myself. So I'll just wait to catch up here.
Okay. So when we're talking about technical interview questions, Randy, what do you think are the most important? I mean, because technical can be you're a project manager, you're a product manager, you're a full stack developer, a mechanical engineer, a geological engineer, a mechanical engineer, right? So
I see. I date myself a little bit, but I go back to the high flying days. I had Memorex as a client, and my dad worked for Kodak for 50 odd years. He's passed away, but he was a mechanical design engineer. I had an opening, so I recruited my own father, for a buck. So that's just the way it was back then. But I got so many stories. But I think with a technical interview, you either know it or you don't. There's one story about, I think it was Google or Apple. They had a problem on their interviewing engineers, PhDs, and they had a question up there. And they said, we want you to solve this in 10 minutes. This is all before AI and all of that. So the right answer was, I can't do it in 10 minutes. That was the right answer. But so many candidates were sweating bullets as a 10-minute mark, and they're still trying to figure this out, and they didn't get hired. The thing is to be clear about what the question is. Make sure you understand it. And we are talking about a hard skill here. We're not talking about soft skills. You either know it or you don't. Okay, so, it's pretty straightforward.
So, like, to me, when I think of technical questions, right, I think, can you explain the concept of object-oriented programming and how it applies to software development, right? Again, that depends on exactly who, you're interviewing, right? And the purpose of that question to me would be to assess the understanding of fundamental programming concepts, right? Another technical question to me, if you're a developer, is, what's a RESTful API and why is it important to modern web development, right? That to me is a purpose to, gauge knowledge of web services and their implementation. Another question that I like to ask people is,
okay,
can you walk me through a complex technical problem that you solved in a previous role?
Okay.
And the purpose of that question for me, and I know everyone's different, but is to understand analytical thinking, technical skills, and the ability to study and solve complex issues. And just before we move on, going back to, a behavioral question, one of the things that I like to ask people is, so describe a situation where you had to learn something new quickly and how did you manage it? And for me, that helps me gauge someone's adaptability, their ability to learn quickly, and their resourcefulness. Another favorite of mine is, can you give me an example of a goal you set and how you achieved it? And that to me is the purpose of goal setting, planning, and execution abilities, right?
One question I like to ask is, when did you fail?
Okay. Right.
The answer I'm looking for is, well, I had some setbacks, but I always learned something for every for everything that didn't work out. And I'd say, okay, well, give me 2 and tell me what you learned. Great answer. Anything else, I would get a laundry list of failures. I should have bought Google at $5 a share. All that stuff.
Right.
It's all these regrets, and what it means is they haven't had any closure to it. It's still occupying their brain and probably affecting their self-esteem. So it wasn't really a trick question as much as it was, are you into learning and improving?
So we're going to just pivot because we're already 20 minutes into this. So now we're going to talk about showcasing your unique value proposition. And so, Dan, this is something I think you do really well, which is how you are able to manage so many different consulting projects in so many different areas, right? Which I think is really a skill. So how do you articulate your unique value proposition during an interview?
See, this is where I think you have a higher esteem than me that I may have had, and that's not a knock on it. It's, it takes a long time for people to develop and understand their unique value proposition. It's not an overnight thing. I was 35 years old when I figured out what I was really good at and what I wanted to do. And for me, a component of sharing it is understanding the data and how I've actually showcased my UVP. The other thing is intrinsically knowing, hey, these are the things I enjoy. These are the things I'm good at. These are the things I'm good at, but I don't necessarily enjoy, because it's those that you both enjoy but are very good at that ultimately determine your UVP. And the secondary component of that is understanding how your UVP differentiates itself from others. So you may both be networkers, you may both be interviewers, but what specific skill do you not see elsewhere that you are specifically implementing? That is the key to it. So really having that overall arching understanding and those details of, this is specifically who I am, what I do best, and this is what makes me different than what else you're going to see on the market.
I love that. Yeah. And I think too, one of the things, and Lynn, or Don, I know that you're next, but I think is, everybody has, unique value propositions, and the longer you've been in the workforce, the greater the variety is of what you bring to that specific role. So, if you can be a marketing and a product person, and you can do all these other things, make sure that you have sort of the different versions, but the core version of yourself. Anyway, so Donna, what do you have to say about that?
It doesn't matter where you are in the level of career, early, middle, end. What I always recommend clients to do is reflect back on their lives in terms of what their experiences were and transform that into a brief story with a beginning, middle, and end that showcases themselves as how this impacted them in such a way that it raises the job more than just a paycheck. It's more of a mission in their life. I'll give you an example. I was working with a client. She was in the caregiving world, and she was really passionate about it. And then she realized during the course of working together that she wanted this to be her business because she felt so compelled with it. So even if you don't bring it into a self-employment range, if you come into the job interview with that level of passion based on, my grandmother had dementia and I had to care for her, and I saw what it did to families, and I really want to help with families in transition with putting mom or dad in a facility, and how it means it gets them in the heart rather than going in through the head. And it makes you more memorable, because when someone is reflecting back on you as to when they were interviewing you, they will remember the story first and they'll pull the concept from it. If you just throw out facts and figures, everything left brain logical, that won't leave the impression. But all of our lives are based in situations we went through, and we can extract for them our big reason for wanting to pursue this job, especially when it seems like it's something different than where we've been. We're helping to show, based on these real life stories, how our skills are transferable into this different industry. And this is what you are genuinely looking for. So that's stories tell, facts. Facts tell, stories sell is the concept. So you have to get
I like that. I like that. Facts. What is it? Facts tell and stories sell. I mean, correct. I think that also speaks to being vulnerable, right? Mm-hmm. And not being robotic and bringing your authentic self to it.
Exactly. So, because the interviewer is not looking for you to give the right answer. They're looking for your answer. There is, like Randy said, there's no right or wrong. It's coming from a place of you're interviewing them as much as they're interviewing you. So if you can feel okay to be who you are in their presence, chances are you're going to thrive in that work environment, and they'll feel that.
Can I add one thing?
Sure.
Quickly. And that is in the interview situation, there's three components. There's the interviewer, there's you, and the fit. And if you see yourself as collaborating with the interviewer to see if to check out the fit, and that's soft and hard skills. It does reduce your anxiety by quite a bit. We're collaborating. It's not like I've got the job and you don't, And briefly on the value proposition, a lot of coaches don't agree with me on this one, but we have a personal brand that says in one sentence what your impact is on a company. Okay, and I can get into that more if you're interested. But the the value proposition is the application of that personal brand specifically to solve an organization's problem or problems. There is no, in my head, there's no such thing as a standard value proposition. That's just my opinion. There can't be. I want to grow people. I want to grow profits. Well, big deal. We all do. It doesn't make you very unique. So I'm just suggesting. I'm just throwing that into the mix to see how it lands. And but the brand comes from the heart and the cognitive, and the value proposition needs to be relevant. If you're not relevant, you're not going to get hired. The proof of concept is always on the candidate to show how relevant they are. And so therefore, technically your value proposition should change each time, however so slightly. In each interview you take with a different company, it should change.
I want to tap into that. We talked a little bit about doing preparation and practicing and role playing. You can use AI and ChatGPT to help you get interview questions prepared that you could answer from the job description, and questions that you can ask for that particular role when you're going to go out to the interview. But I do know that not everybody is really good at interviewing. I am the mother of a neurodivergent, autistic, ADHD adult child, and a lot of people have difficulty interviewing, and I get that. So, if you are autistic, you may have difficulty looking at people in the camera. You may also have difficulty remembering some things. So I have a little tip. If you are going to an in-person interview, if you have a fold-out notepad and you have little notes on the side with a little clock and a timer, maybe you have little bullet points of some things that you can remember for your STAR, or like Randy said, SAR stories, so that you don't forget those points that you'd like to make. And then if you are interviewing on Zoom, if you had an index card, you cut out the middle of the index card so that it is around your camera, and you put the bullet points around the index card so you're still looking at the camera and you don't forget what those bullet points are, so that you can tell those stories that everybody is mentioning and make those important points.
That is huge. Thank you so much, Lynn. I have a young cousin right now. He's Asperger's and he's struggling with interviews. Oh, I thank you so much. And I'm sure there's people out there that are some degree on the spectrum, and maybe they're not even diagnosed, that would be enormous.
And I'm gonna add something on. We don't want to call it Asperger's, because Hans Asperger's was part of the Nazi regime and sent a lot of children to their death. So we want to call it Asperger's, we want to call it autism spectrum disorder.
Okay.
No,
thank you for the correction.
I had no idea, Lynn, and I appreciate that. And I think probably a lot of people don't know that. So a couple things before we move on to the next one, Lynn, that was really great. And to all of you guys who are watching, if this isn't mind blowing to you, it should be, because the information that is being presented, right? It's not a one size fits all. Right. And so what we're trying to do is show you the various ways that you can leverage the talent and showcase the talent that you have. And Lynn, what you suggested is, I'm not a great test taker. Right. And so I had to learn coping mechanisms for it. Just like, it's, interviewing for people, I think, can be really hard. And it's a good transition right now for us to, we were going to talk about effective networking tactics, but what I'd like to do is kind of go back to and flip it and talk about navigating the virtual and in-person interviews, because I think that sort of has a little bit of a better flow of what we're talking about. Are you guys okay if we do the networking after this one?
Yeah.
Okay. So when we're talking about the virtual and in-person interviews and questions, and because I think this ties into, Lynn, what you were saying, and Randy, what you were saying, is that, the tips for virtual interviews, including technology setup and body language, is confusing. And I think that, especially if people aren't used to it. And so I think that, when we're doing the setting up for the networking and virtual, in-person interviews, making sure that your computer works, you're using right browsers, right? I mean, it's like, I have faced that recently, and I didn't know what I didn't know. And if I wouldn't have prepared for it beforehand, I wouldn't have been able to attend the meeting, and that would have been really a disservice. So I think there's things that we need to do um, to get better at that and to prepare in advance for that. So what do you think, Randy, some of those things would be?
Well, I certainly, pardon me. One of the things, I haven't done it with you. Well, one of the things on Zoom calls, for example, is to hit the reduce the size button and put it right under your camera. So you're looking at your camera. You can look at them, but also you can see them as well, as opposed to somewhere else. That's always a really good idea. They think you're talking directly to them. The reality is you can see them, but they're right underneath your. I have a monitor camera, so that's one thing. And that second thing is to practice with others. Could be with a friend. Hey, let's just. And they could live next door. Hey, I just want to talk to you. And how does this look? Lighting is critical. It's the what I call it. It's the U show, or there's another. Jim Carrey in that one movie. It's the Truman Show. It's you. It's and how you come across. You're keeping eye-to-eye contact. So many of the things in a virtual do apply in the personal. Body language, eye-to-eye contact. You can look side to side. Don't look up or don't look down ever. That's one of the things I tell my clients. I'll guarantee you, the answers are not written on the ceiling. You won't see them there. I often would have people that wouldn't look at me, and some of this was cultural. I got that, but the other part of it was they were insecure, and there's not much I can do about that. Let's see. So body language.
I think there are also people, like, for me, when I'm thinking, and sometimes it used to drive people absolutely bananas, but when I'm thinking, sometimes I look up and other people can find it distracting. And so when I go into a situation like that, I sort of say something, like, listen, I just want you to know that if I look up, I'm not paying attention, right? I'm thinking, and, it's not necessarily my best thing to do, but it's what I do. Yeah, go ahead, Dan.
Yeah. So, Lynn started the disability and accessibility component of this, and you touched on something that was really important to me, because I have language processing disorder, which means I know what I'm trying to say up here, but sometimes it doesn't come out appropriately. So what will happen sometimes is I will be looking up to try to visualize what I'm about to say. I am a believer, and this is a strong opinion, that body language is one of the most overanalyzed, worthless components of an actual interview, because you cannot tell me in any form or fashion and have me believe it that the way that somebody dresses or the way their posture is an ultimate determining factor of how they're able to perform the job. So who's creating these structures that are imparting this ideology on people? It's not fair to me. When I was interviewing, I always said I gave people the option: do you want to be on screen on Zoom, or do you not want to be? What's going to help you work best? ultimately my job is to find the best candidates, and the best candidates may not be the one that fits social norms.
Interesting. I mean, I think that's solid advice. But I think that there's two schools of thought, right? If I am interviewing somebody and I'm sending them out as a salesperson, and they're going to be doing in-person presentations, I want them to sort of reflect what my company culture is, right? And I think that that's a conversation. It's not necessarily an edict, but it's a conversation. I wanted to say to that. But some things that I wrote down for technical things for interviews, and Valeska's going to put it in the chat, is, make sure you test your technology, right? Create a professional environment, set up a clean, quiet, well-lit space for your interview if you can, neutral background. Dress appropriately for the job that you're interviewing for, right? So depending on what the role is, I respectfully sort of disagree that I think that is somewhat important. It's not a deal breaker for me, but I think it's important. And again, that's just one person's opinion. I think, when you maintain your body language, I think that's a communication thing of saying, hey, here are some things that I deal with, and I don't want them to be a distraction for you, right? And for me, one of the big ones, and this is me personally, is to minimize my distractions, right? Sometimes you can do that. Sometimes you can't. Sometimes you have a sick kid at home and you can't change the interview, and it is what it is. So then I lead with like, hey, I just want to apologize in advance. I have a sick kid, and but this is really important to me. I appreciate you making time. I'll try to mitigate the distraction. You guys all know me. I live at a zoo, essentially. And, sometimes even my best laid plans, the dogs WWE through my office door, and I mean, it's embarrassing, and they create situations, and it can be distracting. And someday I'm going to video it, because they tumble until they like bust through the door, even if I have it locked. It's a problem. Anyway,
can I just add one quickie here, playing off what Dan said a little bit. When I'm coaching people, they'll say something, whatever. And my response is I'd like you to know what my experience is of you, what you just said, what my experience is. When you describe your experience or what you're feeling, that I'm angry, frustrated, or this is what I've heard, it's not a value judgment in any way. You just simply can't make people wrong today. You just can't, even when they are. They have to see it. So they have to know how they're being received, how they're being perceived, how they're understanding. And it doesn't make any sense. Or, I'm having trouble understanding what you're trying to say. Can you rephrase it? That's ownership in you. And I've used that both as a recruiter and as a coach quite a bit. And the person does rephrase, and sometimes they don't respond at all. That's the best I can do. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, when you describe your experience, because so many of us are afraid of being judgmental. I am. I've been judgmental a lot, mainly with myself. But no, really, it's.
Well, I think what you're saying is what Donna said earlier. Is we all need to be kind. We need to be patient. We need to lead with empathy. We need to lead with understanding. We need to lead with, there isn't a one size that fits all. So someone just made a comment, and which is, I think, directed at me. They said, I would love to think that each person we hire brings uniqueness that helps shape the company culture, making it richer and more diverse. And I absolutely agree with that. But my caveat to that is that sometimes they don't fit culture, right? Like sometimes people don't want to communicate, or they want to do something a different way that doesn't fit with the direction of the rest of the team. It doesn't mean that person isn't talented. It doesn't mean that they can't do the job. But, if you're building a team and one person likes to be independent player and they don't necessarily want to be part of the team, that's going to be tough to merge that, no matter how smart they are and how talented they are. And that can create, divisiveness in a group. So I'm in no way, diminishing that, bringing somebody in that's different than you. I built software that finds bias. So I am totally on board with that. But okay, so you guys, we have 20 minutes. And Dan, just 1 second. I just want to say we've got 20 minutes and we still want to cover the effective networking. And then we want to dive into the more advanced networking opportunities if we have time for it. So Dan, go ahead, then we'll pivot to the next one after this.
No, out of respect for time, I'll skip ahead.
Are you sure?
The only thing I'd like to add, Jen, if I could, is we're talking mostly virtual interviews. I recommend to clients if they have an in-person interview and they're not used to doing a lot of in-person interviews, they do a drive-by the day before so they know where the location is. And maybe they go at lunchtime or beginning of day, end of day, so they see the workforce coming in and out to get an idea of maybe the age group or the way they drive, the way they dress. Because then when they show up for the appointment the next day, the place feels familiar, which helps reduce nerves. And they know, like, should I wear this level of business casual or a little bit down, like college looking, whatever. Sometimes you just have to peruse the location to get a feel for it, and it reduces nerves. So that's the first thing that's going to derail any interview is if you're too nervous.
Yeah.
So are you promoting code switching? Is that just out of curiosity? Because, and the reason I'm asking that is because, and I want to be very respectful of how I say this. When we go to different environments and we try to form fit ourselves, especially if that's not the way that we necessarily grew up, then are we showing up as who we are? So my question is, how much do you actually play into the idea of trying to fit in exactly like everybody else?
I'm not playing that up at all, because that'll tell you right away if you don't feel comfortable there, then that's your answer right there. You go to the interview, you do the best you can, but then you tell yourself, I don't think I would have been happy here anyway. I'm not asking somebody to dress in a tuxedo or to dress, in uber casual. It's just that you pervade the environment, you see the people, and you feel it. Is it something you would feel comfortable in? If you're comfortable, you're going to be a better performer.
I don't think there's anything wrong with calling ahead of time to find out what the appropriate attire is. So, for example, you might think that PwC is a place where you would show up in a suit and a tie. And I was told that because I did a resume workshop there, I was told that if somebody showed up in a suit and a tie, that they would be overdressed and that they didn't do their homework. They should have come less suited up, for that interview.
Been on the receiving end of that, and this was earlier in my career, and I thought if you wore a suit, like, that was great. I walked in and I met the hiring manager, and she's like, you're just not going to be a fit here, and she walked me out. It was that fast. Now, I don't think that would happen today, but this wasn't like a bazillion years ago, and the recruiter said, yeah, you need to dress professionally. Well, dressing professionally to them was different than it was to me. Anyway, I want to just move on to, so the effective networking tactics, Lynn, we're going to start with you, and that's building and maintaining a professional network. And then Dan is going to cover leveraging networks to uncover hidden job opportunities, which a lot of people are posting about, but I don't think a lot of people understand what that means.
Okay. So, LinkedIn wants you to reach out and connect with people to be first level connections. You got to build your network. So remember when you were little, your mommy and daddy said, don't talk to strangers. Well, you're a big person now, and you do need to reach out and connect with people that you don't know. All right. So you want to find people that are in your industry and maybe reach out and have informational interviews. So start with people that are in your on your target company list. So you do have a target company list, right? That's important to have one of those. And then reach out to second level connections to see who can introduce you to somebody who works for that particular target company, and then ask if you can have an informational interview with them. Another thing is if you go to greatcareers.org and you type in the word Boolean, Boolean, you will find an article that I wrote on how to do a Boolean search on LinkedIn or Google. So you want to do
Beautiful.
Boolean searches for people and keywords. And LinkedIn is a database. It's absolutely amazing. So I had somebody who was in my LinkedIn workshop on Sunday, and she wanted to become a hearing instrument specialist, and she didn't have any connections. I came up with like a dozen or two for her through my own personal network. So it's easy peasy. When you have one word, you just put the word in. But if you have two or more words, you got to put quotes around it, to do that Boolean search. Looking at my notes here. So you've got to make connections and reach out to strangers, to make new friends on LinkedIn. But here's a biggie. This is really, really, really big. If you see somebody who is active on LinkedIn, the biggest thing you could do is a commenting strategy. Commenting on other people's posts. LinkedIn loves when you are engaging. It creates visibility, discoverability, and credibility. Not when you are saying, oh, great article, or, nice post. Nothing like that. We're talking thought leadership. Give something substantial, make a substantial comment with, a sentence or two or even
Right.
more.
It doesn't need to be a paragraph, right?
Yeah. But not two words,
Right.
give
Right.
it some oomph.
So Dan, what, do you want to talk about how to leverage networking to uncover hidden job opportunities?
So this is very much my superpower, as you know. And I did a post yesterday that I said, I never knew when I was a kid that my propensity for never shutting up would wind up being my greatest strength. But my wife still tells me to be quiet, but that's okay. In fairness, I don't stop
Different
talking
context.
Yeah, different content. I teach this, and I went from having 120 connections to having 15,000 and turning away 75,000. I want to repeat that. I've turned away 75,000. And I did that on purpose because for me, intentionality is paramount to every single thing I do. There has to be the law of reciprocity has to be a component whenever I'm looking at what am I willing to connect with somebody, because it can't just all be about you asking for something. It has to be able to be, hey, well, this is how I could support you. And the reason this plays into the question about, and I don't even like using the term hidden job market because Clubhouse sort of killed it, uh, but is when you do what Lynn was talking about, and I always like to give Lynn credit because she's one of the most brilliant people I've ever met. When you comment and when you raise your social credibility, whether it's through creating organic posts where you position your UVP, where you talk about what you do and how you excel best, to commenting on other people's posts. Once you build that social credibility up, what winds up happening is now people understand who you are and what you do. And a lot of times, hidden job market isn't even necessarily you reaching out. A lot of times, people will reach out to you. And there may be jobs that are not on the market yet. But at the same point, people just may send you jobs that they see that you don't, which I still consider a component of that because they know, hey, you're looking for this, you're doing this, you'd be a really good fit for this. So now they're sending you. So now, the outreach that you're doing is complemented on all these different sides by the inbound that you're getting as a result of you showcasing exactly who you are and creating this intentional network. Now, I'm not saying you need to have 15,000 connections. Far from it. I've been doing this a long, long time. But what I am saying is the more intentional you are, the more strategic you are, the more you're able to find your voice and build or find a community, because you don't always have to build a community, but you could find a community. Then this is going to really create a situation where I'm going to use something that Lynn and Kevin D. Turner talk about a lot, is if you look at those connections, you may have 5,000 first connections, but if you scale that to first and second, you may be at 2 million. You scale that to third, you may be at 350 million. And what that means is that your reach is not just what you have now, it's what that expanded reach is if you're hitting home in the right ways and bringing in additional people that can really complement you as you could complement them.
I agree with that. I have just a couple things that I think are important, and this is going to be like one of the things that we talk about in the boot camp that we're doing is getting really granular on finding sort of the hidden job opportunities, right? So there's informational interviews, there's joining professional associations and groups, there's leveraging social media, using alumni networks, attend industry conferences and meetups virtually or in person, ask for referrals, volunteer, freelance, and follow up. And I'm not giving you the exact strategy and how to do it because, there's too much detail. But that's a really great example of one of the things that we're going to be doing in the boot camp is getting really granular and giving specific strategies for how to engage. So we've only got 8 minutes left. So I'd like to turn it over to Donna right now. So she can talk about engaging with professional communities and industry groups. And then we'll turn it over to Lynn to follow up on building long-term professional relationships. And then, I think I'm available to stay an extra 5 to 10 minutes if people have additional questions. Otherwise, this is being recorded and we will circulate it when it's done.
It surprises me how many times I've come across people that are in an industry, let's say purchasing or human resources, and they are not a member of the professional community. And so I always encourage clients, whatever walk of life they're in, is there a professional community of some sort? Is it a local chapter or maybe something virtual? Because that is a great way to network with people in your specific industry. The concept of networking is a bit foreign to people in the job market. When you are a self-employed business owner, the concept of networking is a necessity. It's like you're the aorta to your business. You have to network to glean. But sadly, in the job market, after you leave a company, you kind of forget who you worked with. So networking within your professional organization, but also reaching out to where you were previously with your other coworkers. Many of my clients say, I got this job because my boss that I worked with at a previous company recruited me to come with the next company, which goes to show that everywhere you are, there are people you want to come along, you want to stay in contact with, because applying on a job board is a lot less probable than having somebody walk your resume right down to the source because you knew somebody. And that my clients, that's what usually happens. They find somebody inside. So your net work is your net worth. That's always talked about in the small business world, but it's true in any level of employment. So pay attention to who's around you right now. Pay attention to who you left in previous jobs. You might be friends on Facebook. Maybe you are connected on LinkedIn, hopefully. But resurrect those relationships, because that's ultimately how you will find your ideal and better next position, is when you utilize the people around you as the best resources.
Right. Don't let it go. It's an ongoing journey that you should start immediately. I mean, when my kids were in high school, I'm like, you need a LinkedIn profile, right? If you want that internship, if you want to, work with this college or this university, it all matters.
Exactly. That is the job seekers version of an online business card, i.e. website, much like a business has its own website. So just a one line item of a company name and dates of service and not explaining anything beyond that, you're doing yourself a disservice. And that's why we're so lucky to have Lynn here, because she can guide on the best practices. But you are the product, and you have to learn how to sell yourself, as much as that might sound like a 4-letter word, and create a spreadsheet of the different people you've met along the way and retain it and add to it. Be sure to get a phone number, because phone numbers will not change, but email addresses will potentially.
Back up your LinkedIn. You can back up your LinkedIn. I'm just saying, like, sometimes you get locked out. Sometimes they may misinterpret it, a comment or a post, and you don't want to lose all those connections. Okay. So Lynn, I didn't mean to talk over you. Go ahead.
That's okay. We get excited here.
Absolutely. We are passionate about what we do. So you do have to sell yourself. You have to, on your resume, and then, you can duplicate that on LinkedIn. Every single bullet point needs to have a metric. How did you help a company make money, save time? So when you tell that story of all your accomplishments and you have those metrics on your LinkedIn profile under all your work experience, people can see how you move mountains. If you did it in the past, you can do it in the future, right? Now, tapping onto what Donna just said, it was brilliant. You've got to talk to humans. Humans hire humans, not bots. You've got to build relationships. So I had a client in Rochester, New York. There's not a lot that goes on in Rochester, New York. She has under 500 LinkedIn connections. And so, you have to have 501 plus LinkedIn connections. You have to be active on the platform. But she has less than 500 LinkedIn connections. I said, get out there and network. You have to build relationships. She did that. She says, oh my God, Lynn, I got 4 executive offers in the last 2 weeks. She said, now I have to make a decision as to which job I'm going to take. So she had the resume, she had the metrics, she built the LinkedIn profile from her resume, and then some. You got to blow it up above and beyond just what's on the resume. And she went 100%. Out and networked. So that's what you got to do. When you go and network and you do these informational interviews on LinkedIn, you never ask for a job. You ask for information. And you ask them, tell me about the culture of your company. And when they respond, remember, you have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. Thank you so much for telling me about the culture of your company. I'm so glad to hear that, because I'm gonna apply to the job I saw online. And then you shut up. Because what happens is they might just say, oh, give me a copy of your resume. I happen to know the hiring manager, or I'll find out who the hiring manager is, because you just let them talk and built a rapport. And if you just got the red carpet rolled out for you, they might get an employee referral bonus for sending your resume in. So that's kind of that back end networking part. So take advantage of it. There's your tip for the day. Back to you.
And you meet really great people along the way. Like, you never know what's going to happen when you meet somebody new. So we've only got a minute left. And
can I add one thing? Because these are the 3 experts. Can I add one thing?
Of course.
Yes, no? Okay. So much of it is how we hold it in our heads. And when people think about networking as looking for a job or selling, networking really is exchanging information that matters to you. A lot of my clients ask the question, so how is AI being used in your organization right now? And so if you have it less about selling, less about, and as we just discussed, less about looking for a job, I think we have to make the assumption, that your network they are not going to know where the jobs are. I think that's just something how you hold it. But the idea is there's something you're excited about. There's something that's current, and you want to get either people's advice on something, because believe me, that's the greatest compliment you can pay anybody in the world. I need your advice or your counsel or your thoughts on this. Even a stranger will stop in the middle of the street and say, "Hey, yeah, I'll talk to you." So
Yeah.
if you get off of this, I'm unemployed, and poor me, and I'm looking for work. We've already driven this home. It's not going to work. Networking is not about selling, and it's not about looking for a job. It has nothing to do with that.
But one
Okay,
other thing
done.
networking is not, when Lynn was saying informational interviews, you ask the questions, they make the response. You do not get defensive. You do not reply. You do not minimize whatever they say. You're just taking the information in and you process it and take what you need and leave the rest behind after it. So I think people right away get, well, I tried that and it didn't work. No, got to keep an open mind and let them, because the more you let them talk, the more they will talk and the deeper it will go.
Donna, you brought up a good point. Very, very quickly, I wanted to add on that when I hear the term informational interview, and I'm dating myself. Tell me about what your company does, or tell me about the products or your market. Not good. Because all that information, anything you need is on the website, is on ChatGPT. So you cannot ask questions about what do you do here, how do you make your money, what's your market, etc., or some detail. I mean, I go way back. I always shocks kids when I'm talking, but before the internet, I have to go get financial reports. It's the only way I can find anything out about the company. But today, you're supposed to know all of that, and I just cringe when I hear the term informational interview. I'd rather I'd like to know more about like culture, hiring, how decision making. I've heard this on the street. Is this how you do things? Yeah, great. But don't go in and ask
I
questions.
think it depends. I mean, I'm going to be a little bit of a contrarian, Randy.
Please, I wish you would. I wish you would.
I know this is what you were waiting for, right? For me to just, stir the pot just a little bit.
Nail that puppy. Nail that puppy.
I think it's, the information to me is like, the company background, finances, all of that. To me, like an informational interview is like, tell me about the inside of the company. Like, listen, you know me. I want the inside scoop to would I be a good fit here? Would I be, a bull in a China shop, or, what are people flexible? Like that for me is like the informational interview, and to ask them, how did they like it? How do you like the job? Is this been a really good fit for you? Because, you never know someone who's going to know someone who knows someone, and just getting things on Nextdoor or Reddit or Quora or other people's comments. I think that to me is a different definition of an informational interview. Right. Like,
you wanted the insider secrets to whatever extent, because they live there.
But you can't be like, I want the insider secrets.
I mean, you're approaching it from that standpoint, because the other things are public knowledge. Like,
you guys, just wait 2 seconds. So first of all, we're over time, y'all. And if you can stay, awesome. If you have to run, totally understand. To everyone who's still here with us, thank you so much. Like, we really appreciate your time. I know, Dan, you posted the boot camp in there. If you guys enjoyed this, you will be blown away by what we're doing in the 2-day boot camp. Whether you're looking for a job or you know somebody who is, take a look at it. And if you can repost it and share it in your groups and on your LinkedIn and share what we're doing, we really appreciate that. That means a lot to us. So there you go. I said my thank you. If you guys want to stay, love to have you. If you got to go, totally understand. Okay, Dan, you.
So I think Donna was in the middle of saying something, so I want to be respectful.
No,
Sorry, Dan.
I'm done. Go ahead, Dan.
Okay. So I just wanted to mention, as a recruiter, informational interviews were always part of my process for preparing a candidate. So when I was doing it, if I knew I had a software development manager, then in order to properly prepare them for the final interview, I had a list of different software development managers I trusted that I would go to and say, hey, can you have this conversation? Because as a recruiter, I know that I don't have all the detail on the day to day, nor can I answer those questions or have even that background. And that's something that a lot of people don't realize about recruiters. We are hiring for positions that we may have no experience in. So that was a critical component. And by doing that, that allowed that candidate to have a lot easier time. One of the things I suggest in terms of empowering people is if you are interviewing and you get to that stage where you are going on a final interview, you can say to the recruiter, hey, do you have anybody that you're in contact with that I could speak to that's in this specific division? And if they do, then great. If not, Lynn already talked about the Boolean strings, find them.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, Randy, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I just wanted to thank everyone who had to jump off before, since we're over time. But what else did you want to say about, the informational, interviews?
Oh, no.
And,
I think the words we use are pretty important, period, how they're interpreted. Very briefly, I had a CEO of all my recruiting was in high tech, and I had a CEO said, "Hey, I need somebody." So we went and had lunch, and he described, "So what do you want this person to do?" And they went through this whole description, and I said he thought he needed a VP of marketing. I said, you really need a VP of sales. What you're describing to me is sales, not marketing. And he looked at me and said, "Oh, okay," because. So in other words, some people can't even differentiate between those two terms, sales and marketing. So when I heard informational interview, and I agree with everything that's been said, I'm just suggesting that for my own clients, be sure you ask about the culture, the kind of person that's successful here, the kind of person that doesn't work out here. All that's important. I just want to add, besides that in our network, we have three kinds of people, the A's, the B's, and the C's. And if you've all heard this, just grimace and give me a minute. The A's are family, friends, and associates that are stakeholders in what you're trying to do. You trust them, and they'll do whatever they can to help you in your journey. That's an A. A B, on the other hand, is someone you've worked with, but that you've never really established that kind of relationship. They may or may not return your call. I always say an A will return your email, text, or phone call within 36 hours guaranteed because they care. You're high enough up in the list. But a B may or may not. Maybe it's been 5 years since your last contact. Well, okay, And when I evaluate someone's network, that's what I look at. C's, I always like to say that you can look them up in the phone book, but nowadays you can look them up on the internet. Sure, you can do a cold call, but who the hell is this? Because the average adult knows 150 people, and my clients simply have to mind that. I've got stories. I had no idea so-and-so knew somebody at Pixar across the bay. They were actually on a school board where their kids, and he was on a school board at Pixar, and he was looking for a job, and so they had this commonality. Commonality is the key to networking. This matters to me. This matters to you, so they had children that went to this school, and it matters. And that was the bridge. You need a bridge. It's important. I can't emphasize this enough. It's commonality. Without that, it's waste. Just might as well call up a C because they're not going to talk to you anyway.
So thank you for that. So I think
attack me, please.
Never. I just like to stir the pot from time to time, Randy. But hey, Dan curated a few questions that we didn't get back to. And one of the questions is how to get over the fear of rejection or being ghosted when reaching out to new people on LinkedIn. I'm going to just answer that one quick for my feelings is that, it's a numbers game. Don't take it personally. I think if you're sending someone a Bible and, it's too long or it's incredibly formal, I think most people tend to be like, not sure. If it's conversational, I think you'll get a better response, but don't take it personally. This is a numbers game.
I think the other piece of that is you have to try to figure out who that person is that you're this on the other side of the table. Read their LinkedIn profile, do some other research, because there might be a method that works better for them. Maybe they prefer to be texted over and they don't check LinkedIn a lot. As crazy as that might sound, there's always a preferred method of communication. So make sure you're pursuing that. You're exactly right. Just because they didn't respond to you doesn't mean you're not a good person, you're not worthy, and
Right.
that's not a healthy response, and it's not going to help you find the next step. They could be on vacation, they could be at a conference, they could have lots of reasons why they did that.
But don't take it personally.
Exactly.
I mean, if you said something jerky, then maybe they're not going to respond. But so I know I personally have just 5 minutes left before I need to hop off. But Dan, you put many companies ask if you need accommodation. What are your thoughts on sharing with the interviewer that you are neurodivergent or
I have my opinions. My opinions are public. I'm going to defer to Lynn, who's a little bit more eloquent when it comes to how she talks about this.
Okay, so I'm gonna provide two schools of thought. If you're bold, you can ask and state it out front that you, when you get the job offer, that you need accommodations put in the offer. The other way is that you get the company, my preferred way, you get the company to fall in love with you first. Okay. You get the job offer, you start. When you start, that's when you go to human resources and then you tell them what accommodations that you need, or ask them, what they might provide. But you should be hopefully able to advocate for yourself and know what you need. And if you don't, there are all kinds of resources out there which talk about the kinds of accommodations that might be available to a neurodivergent community.
So your suggestion in short is to not necessarily bring it up initially unless there's a platform. And I'm sort of with you in the middle of, there's a lot of people that check the box when they're applying for a job. And I can tell you that a lot of the filters, whether it's legal or not, can filter people out based on that. And that's just a fact. So I would do it later myself. Go ahead, Dan.
Yes.
I'll try to be brief or at least speedy. So there's a couple of things. The resource Lynn mentioned that's probably the best one is the Americans with Disability Act. Yes, I understand it's based off of the United States. I'm not sure if the question was referring to the interview process or referring to the actual start afterwards. If it's the interview process, during the application phase, they may ask you if you are a person with disability and if you do need accommodations. In that case, the recruiter is not allowed to know what that disability is. That goes to a third party that works at the organization. I mentioned this last time, so go back and take a look at the last one. But if you scroll all the way to the bottom at most web pages for companies, you'll see the accommodation form. You could request it. However, by virtue of requesting, just because a recruiter doesn't necessarily know what the what condition you're dealing with or what situation you're dealing with, they will know that you've requested accommodation based on the accommodation that you're getting. So there is still a level of bias that is associated with it. When it comes time to work, so there is a company has to provide accommodations unless it is burdening the company. That's not the exact words, but close enough. So that means if you are somebody that's neurodivergent, if you have a child with special needs, then they have to do everything that they can in order to accommodate, unless it's going to have financial repercussions. That includes things like working remotely, have a standing desk, maybe having a different schedule. So there are a lot of things. Make sure you look at that ADA website to see what kinds of things. And if you don't know, you can reach out to ADA lawyers that will let you know what is and what is not within your rights. But the last thing I'm going to mention is Lynn said something. She made a comment about being bold. People are still so fearful of bias that there is not a lot of people being bold in their assertion for standing up for themselves. The more people that do, the more things will change, but there is an enormous amount of ambiguity within corporations on what exactly is neurodivergence and how it differs from person to person, because there is no two of the same. Know your rights, know your rules, and make sure that you're doing the best by yourself to put yourself in the best position to succeed. You'll be there longer, you'll be happier, and you'll have a better life.
One other tip. If you have to resign from a job because you feel like your ADA is not being attended to, this happened to me. I needed a stand-up desk and an ergonomic chair because of a bad back and I had 2 doctors' prescriptions, and my HR department said that they would give me one but not the other, and I went, "Oh, Dr. HR, oh my, oh my," and that affected my ability to get unemployment. So, needless to say, this went to a big brouhaha. There's something in the Pennsylvania law that says you can get unemployment for necessitous and compelling reasons. And I didn't need to hire a lawyer. All I did was get all my documentation together, and I got my unemployment because of those 2 little words. So, FYI.
Interesting. All right. So I know.
Can I make one last quick comment? This is not about ADA, but companies want candidates that want them. I don't think companies are not interested anymore whether you can do the job. That's a secondary. What they really are looking for, you want to do the job. You're excited about the company. You're excited about the project. It's not because you need a job. It's because you really want to do this. You're highly motivated. It's the number one way that companies are hanging on to talent now. Is they're trying to scramble and put employees in jobs where they're highly motivated. Okay, so that's all I wanted to say is that it's got to make sense from a career standpoint, and it's got to make sense. I really am excited about what you're doing here, authentically. So that's my last. So we're done. I'm done.
So Jen has a number of things to do. So we're going to wrap up. I just want to remind everybody as you're going through that we do have the event coming up. We have an incredible panel of experts that are going to provide some just tremendous info and more. We got Gina, we got Anna, we've got Lisa, we've got so many different people that are really top of the field. So make sure you go to events.intrycareers.com, check it out, sign up. I don't get involved in projects unless I'm 100% behind them. Jennifer is one of the most heart-centered, strategic people I've ever met. Rarely can you find both in the same human being, and we found one. So it's really an exceptional experience. In the meantime, check out the site. Also check out all the panelist profiles, follow them, look at their sites. If you find something that's important to you that you want to follow up on, reach out. We're more than happy to answer questions, or at least I could say that about myself. So anyway, thank you for tuning in. The next edition of You Don't Know Jack about interview strategy and networking, but we'll fix that. Will be, I believe, on the 23rd.
We're going to probably have one more event talking about mental health and your job search, and we're just trying to get everybody's schedule, but it will be sometime this week. And
I will be there for that one.
And then we are doing another one, and we may even do another one based on all the requests that we're getting. So that said, y'all, these guys are amazing. I'm humbled to be in their presence, and I know for a fact that if you reach out, every single one of them will respond. So thank you all so much. This was phenomenal. All right.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Take care.